Hello Internet. Let's explore distributed queuing between two queue managers. Today we are going to connect channels between a Windows queue manager and a Linux queue manager. Here's the diagram of the empty queues and channels that we are going to create. We will create the sender channel win.2.lin and the receiver channel win.2.lin. You can notice that both sender and receiver channels have the same name. Also on the Windows server we create the transmit queue win.2.lin, the remote queue lin.test.queue, and on the Linux server we create the destination queue lin.test.queue. Now let us check the status of the queue manager and start it if necessary. I don't think it is necessary to start now because the queue manager is already started. You can see that there are two queue managers. The top one is the Linux queue manager. It has a queue there, and the next one is the Windows queue manager, which is test QM1. It also has a dead letter queue. Now let us create the transmission queue. Right click on queues and select new and click on local queue. Enter the name as win.2.lin. Click next. It's always better to give a description of the MQ object. So I'm entering the description here. A transmission queue is a special type of local queue associated with a sender channel that holds the messages safely until they are transferred to the queue manager on the other side of the channel. Note that I have mentioned the usage as transmission. After this, click Finish, and that will create the transmission queue object. Now let us create the sender channel. Click on the channels and right click, select new and select sender channel. So let me enter the channel name as win.2.lin and click next. In the next window, enter the other properties. Some of them are optional and some of them are mandatory. The optional parameter description you can enter or you can leave it blank. Transmission protocol is TCP. Connection name will be usually the IP address of the destination queue manager. The transmission queue, enter the name of the transmission queue which was already created. The next parameter is local communication address. It is optional. Following this, you can click the finish button. It shows the object was created, and you can see the channel there. The standard channel is not running now. The status of the channel is inactive. So now let's create the remote queue definition on the Queue Manager Test QM1 on Windows. So click on queues, right click on queues and select new and select remote queue definition. Now enter the name of the remote queue as lin.test.queue. Then click next, and now enter the other properties. Write a description followed by the name of the remote queue, the remote and the remote queue manager. Other properties you can leave it as default. The remote queue corresponds to the name of the actual queue at the target, and that is lin.test.queue. The remote queue manager will be linqm1, and the transmission queue is win.2.lin. After entering this, click finish. A pop-up window appears indicating successful creation of the remote queue. You can see the status of the newly created queue on the Explorer. So now we have successfully created the sender side of the channel. So let's go ahead and create the receiver side. The receiver channel has to be created at the Linux Queue Manager, linqm1. So first click on queues and create a local queue with the name lin.test.queue. This is the one which will receive the messages. You can do this in many ways by using Explorer, by right-clicking queues and selecting local queues, or you can also log in to the remote queue manager and running the run mqsc command to create the local queue. I'm going to use PuTTY to log into the queue manager server. So let me log into the server where the queue manager runs. This is the Linux Queue Manager, and I am logging as MQM, which is the MQM admin, and I'm going to run the run MQSC with the Queue Manager name. Let's display the Queue Manager properties, disk QMGR. Also, let us display the queues already defined there. You can see all the queues which are already there. Now let's define the local queue using define queue local within bracket lin.test.queue. This will be the local queue. So the queue is created, and I'm going to display the newly created queue using display queue and the name of the queue, lin.test.queue. So that shows the queue's properties. Let's now execute the command interface and go back to MQ Explorer and examine the queue that we just created. So when you click queues, you can see the newly created queue, that is lin.test.queue. Now let's create the receiver channel. Right click on channel, new, and select receiver channel. So enter the name of the receiver channel. The name of the receiver channel should be the same as the sender channel on the other queue manager. So it will be win.to.lin. After typing the name, click next. If you want to enter description, you can enter it. The transmission protocol is TCP, type is receive. Once that is done, click on finish. A pop-up window shows indicating the successful creation of the sender channel. You can see that sender channel is inactive. The sender channel will become active when it receives the message. So now we have completed both the sender side and receiver side MQ objects required for sending and receiving the messages. So let's test our setup by putting some messages on the remote queue at the sender side. So click on the remote queue, right click on the remote queue and select put test message. On the window that appears, type a test message there and then click on the put message button. Put some more messages. One more message there. Now let's check whether the messages were sent to the other side. So before that, look at the transmission queue. So the transmission queue has some messages queued up, which are nothing but the messages that we put in the remote queue. The reason for this is that the channel is not running at the sender side. So let's look at the channels. The sender channel is inactive. Let's start it. Right click on that and click on start. So the channel is initializing and it is running now. Now let's go and check the receiver side. The receiver channel is running there, and let's go to the queue which is supposed to receive the messages. So if you see, you can see that there are 3 messages which have been received, which are nothing but the same messages that we put on the sender side. Now let's go to the command line and use a sample program AMQS-get to read the messages from the queue destructively, which means it will read the messages and at the same time it will delete the messages from the queue. I'm entering the command AMQS-get queue name space queue manager name. That reads out the message and exits after a few seconds. At the same time, the queue is cleared of the messages. So you can see that on the Explorer also. Right now the cut up is 0. So that completes our demonstration of distributed queuing using sender and receiver channels.